In this session, you're going to explore how to configure group settings in Microsoft Entra ID and why it's critical to tighten these configurations for better control, automation, and security. Whether you manage hybrid identities or operate fully in the cloud, group settings directly influence how users collaborate, how apps are managed, and how access is granted. Let's walk through directly on the Entra admin portal and understand why you may need to adjust these settings based on best practices and organizational security policies. Let's start with the General tab. This governs group creation, group membership, and self-service permissions. If self-service group management is set to yes, group owners can manage memberships using My Groups. This setting helps reduce IT overhead by delegating group membership updates. However, if not monitored, it can also lead to group sprawl or unauthorized access if sensitive groups are included. You should enable this only for managed or monitored environments. Restrict user ability to access groups, currently set to no. This means users can view directory-wide group memberships, which might expose organizational structure or sensitive membership data. For better privacy and security, especially in large or regulated environments, set this to yes to restrict access and enforce read-only visibility. Users are allowed to create security groups via Azure portals, APIs, or PowerShell. While this supports collaboration and DevOps agility, it can also lead to uncontrolled access delegation if users aren't trained. You should evaluate whether group creation should be limited to admins or enabled only through automated workflows. Likewise, allowing users to create Microsoft 365 groups helps with Microsoft Teams and Outlook collaboration, but again, raises the issue of ownership, naming inconsistency, and lifecycle management. If left unchecked, you may face clutter, unused resources, or compliance issues later. Consider restricting this to selected groups or setting policies to keep it organized. You're currently viewing the Groups and then Expiration section in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. This is where you configure group lifecycle management for your Microsoft 365 groups. From here, you can ensure that unused or obsolete groups don't clutter your environment or pose unnecessary security risks. The group lifetime in days is set to 180, which means each Microsoft 365 group will expire 6 months after its creation or last renewal, unless the group owner actively renews it. Group owners are notified by email at 30, 15, and 1 day before expiration. If the owner doesn't take action, the group, along with its associated content in Teams, SharePoint, or Outlook, is automatically deleted. This is an excellent way to reduce stale groups and enforce accountability for ownership. I've also entered an email contact to be notified in case a group doesn't have an owner. This is a smart safeguard because some groups lose their owners over time due to role changes or employee departures. Having this fallback ensures you're not caught off guard when no one is available to renew a group. However, the current setting, Enable Expiration for these Microsoft 365 groups, is marked as None, which means no expiration policy is actively being enforced. If you want this lifecycle policy to take effect, you should select All to apply it to every Microsoft 365 group in the tenant, or Selected if you want to target specific groups only. By enabling this expiration policy, you align your environment with best practices for group governance, reduce clutter, and help ensure that access permissions and shared resources stay relevant and tightly controlled. You're currently viewing the Groups and then Naming Policy page in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. This is where you control the naming conventions for Microsoft 365 groups in your directory, specifically through blocked word lists. From this screen, You can upload a list of terms that you want to prevent users from using in group names. These could include profanity, sensitive words, reserved terms, or executive-level titles like CEO, admin, or IT security, which should not be casually assigned to group names. This page gives you 3 simple steps to manage that list. First, you can download a CSV file containing the current list of blocked words. Then, you can edit that list or create a new one by adding or removing terms, up to 5,000 words maximum. Finally, you upload the updated CSV back into this interface to apply the naming restrictions. Enforcing a group naming policy like this is critical for governance. It helps you maintain consistency, professionalism, and security awareness in how users name groups, especially in large or multi-tenant environments where clarity and compliance are key. If you haven't yet implemented a naming policy, now is the time to upload your first blocked words list to prevent confusion, misuse, or inappropriate naming conventions in your organization. You're now viewing the Group Naming Policy tab under the Groups and then Naming Policy section in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. This is where you can define naming conventions for Microsoft 365 groups created by your users. From this page, you're able to enforce prefixes and suffixes on group names, ensuring consistency and clarity across your directory. When you enable this setting, you're not just making names look nice, you're helping your organization standardize naming for easier searchability, classification, and governance. For instance, you could require that all groups created by the finance department start with the prefix FIN or end with NY if the group is region-based. This also helps IT and security teams easily identify group purpose or ownership at a glance. To configure it, you simply check the Add Prefix or Add Suffix options, and then choose the type, such as Department, Country Code, or Custom Text, from the drop-down. Once applied, these naming rules will automatically be enforced for all new Microsoft 365 groups, helping you avoid cluttered, inconsistent, or misleading group names like Test 123 or Team Alpha Secure Admin. Implementing this policy is a best practice, especially if you manage a large tenant or a distributed organization with many group creators. It brings discipline and traceability to your Microsoft 365 environment, supporting both operational efficiency and compliance. So, what's your key takeaway? You should treat group configuration not just as a technical checkbox, but as a security and governance strategy. By setting expiration rules, naming policies, and limiting group creation, you prevent confusion, avoid unnecessary exposure, and bring discipline to how access is managed in your tenant.